Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rabbi yassir wa la tu'assir wa tammim bil khair wa bika nasta'een. This week, inshallah, we will be going through the concise tafseer of Surah Al-Asr. This is a surah which is very well known. Many young children have also memorized it because it is extremely short. In fact, it is one of the shortest surahs of the Quran. It is a Makki surah with only 3 verses. But although it is so short, it is an extremely powerful surah that has a very deep meaning if we ponder into it. So this surah Al-Asr refers to the time. The title of the surah Al-Asr refers to the time. And this surah was shown a lot of importance by the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. It is mentioned that by Ubaidullah bin Hisan radiallahu an, that whenever two Sahaba, two companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would meet, then they would not part company until one of them had recited Surah Al-Asr in its entirety to the other. Meaning that they would gather, they would meet, and when they would meet, what they would do is they would recite Surah Al-Asr as a reminder to one another. This was what was their practice. Imam Shafi'i rahmatullahi alayhi mentions that if people understood and thought about this surah carefully, they would realize that it is got sufficient information in it for their guidance. So if no other surah of the Quran were to be revealed, and it was only this particular surah, hypothetically speaking, this would be sufficient for the guidance of mankind. There are 4 important qualities that are mentioned in the surah. The first is to have Iman, which is obviously the most important capital that a person has to have in this dunya. Then a person needs to carry out righteous deeds. Then advising one another towards truth, and advising one another towards patience. So these are the 4 themes, the 4 qualities that are brought out in this particular surah. Now as we move into the translation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, wal asr. This is the introduction of the surah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taking an oath. Now when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath, He doesn't need to take an oath by anything, because He is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But He takes an oath to highlight or bring or draw our attention to a very important aspect. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that I swear by the time, wal asr, I swear by the time. Now, what is the relationship between time, the oath, and the subject matter that is being dealt with in this particular surah, which is the 4 qualities that we have discussed already? So what is the relationship between this subject? The relationship is that all activities in our life take place within time. Time has been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and everything that we do, we wake up in the morning, we perform salah, we perform wudu, we engage with one another, we interact with one another. All of these take place within the cavity of time. Time is the capital of man's existence. The manner in which man invests time, if he invests it wisely, then it will yield eternal returns. It will yield returns in this dunya. He will see the barakah of it in this dunya, and he will also see its effect in eternity, which is the most important part of this investment. However, if a person wastes the capital of time in this dunya, meaning that he or she does not use it towards doing good deeds, then this will yield a loss that will be in eternity, meaning that the person will be in Jahannam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. So the rest of the surah advises us how to invest one's time correctly. And it would not be incorrect to say that this is a surah which is like an investment advice to people in terms of how they should be spending the capital of their life. Some ulama mentioned that wal asr here specifically refers to the last part of the day, and some of them mentioned that it refers to Salatul Asr in particular, because this is a very blessed salah. It is also, some ulama mention, one of the most important salahs. And the reason for this is that, Salatul Asr is at a time when many of us are busy. We are either returning home from work or finishing our day's chores, etc. And often people are very neglectful with regards to Salatul Asr, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, حافظوا على الصلاة حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى, specifically mentioning that we should protect this middle salah, which is Salatul Asr. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ, that indeed man is in a state of loss. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ, indeed man, لَفِي خُسْرٍ, is in a state of loss. So man is such that he prefers that which is temporary to that which is eternal. Man prefers this dunya over the akhirah, and his satisfaction in this dunya and this earthly abode to the hereafter. Man is overpowered by desires and hopes which distract him from using the capital of his life, which is time, correctly, and investing it in those avenues which will yield him the most important returns in the hereafter. And then the last verse, we now have the exception. So we spoke about man being at a loss, but there is an exception. Who will not be at a loss? إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, except those who brought iman, who believed, وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and did righteous deeds, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, and advised each other towards truth, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, and advised each other towards patience. So here we find the four qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bringing to our attention with regards to how we should correctly invest our time. The first two, bringing iman and doing good deeds, these are for our moral and spiritual development. And we are quite well aware of bringing iman and doing good deeds. But what about the second two? Here, this concept of tawasi, this is to advise someone strongly and effectively about the best course of action in a particular situation. So when we talk about watawasaw, to advise, we are talking about advising someone effectively about the best course of action in a particular situation. Ulama have mentioned that advising towards haqq means that a person should advise one to have the correct faith and to do good deeds, while advising one towards sabr means that a person should exercise sabr or patience by abstaining from sins and evil deeds. Another way of looking at it is that to advise towards haqq is enjoining good, and to advise towards sabr is forbidding of evil. So this is the summary of this particular surah, which basically says that you've got this precious capital of time. What must you do with this time? That if you do not use it correctly, you will be in an eternal loss. But how do you come out of that loss? There are four things that you can do in your life, which if you mold the pattern of your life within this cavity or these cavities, you bring iman, you do good deeds, you command towards good, and you forbid evil in your life, then this will ensure eternal success and the best return for the capital of your time. Time is the invaluable capital of man's existence. The correct investment of this capital is the objective of life in this world. And every moment that is wasted will be a source of regret in the hereafter. It is mentioned that when a person goes into Jannah, then he will have no regrets except one. The one regret that a person will have in that place where his every desire has been fulfilled, his regret would be that he wasted a moment and he did not say Subhanallah or make the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The poet very beautifully says in Arabic that your life comprises a few breaths that can be counted. حياتك أنفاس تعد فكلما مضى نفس منها انتقصت به جزءا. That when one of them is sent out, a part of your life has diminished. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentioned in a hadith that when a person wakes up in the morning, he invests his soul or life in a business enterprise. Some of the investors free or save the capital from loss, and others destroyed, meaning this capital of the time that you have in this dunya. The Quran also mentions, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu hal adullukum ala tijara. O people, O people who have brought Iman, should I not point you towards that trade which will save you from a painful punishment? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to our time in this dunya as a trade. And we as businessmen, as traders, we need to reflect upon how we can maximize our returns. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with the correct understanding. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.